You're listening to the AfricaMusicLaw.com show, Africa's premier entertainment law show empowering the African artist. And now, your host, attorney, speaker, visionary, game changer, Ms. Uduak.
Hey ML people, it's your one and only certified game changer, Ms. Uduak. Welcome to the 98th episode of the AfricaMusicLaw.com show. If you're just joining us for the first time, my full name is Uduak. I go by Ms. Uduak for short. I'm a fashion and entertainment lawyer with the law firm of AB2 Law Group PC, located in California, USA. This show you're listening to, the African Music Law Show, is a show that is about the business of empowering the African artist and the creative industry at large here in the US and across the African continent. Of course, Europe as well, since we have strong followership in Europe as well. UK more precisely. Our execution is pretty simple. We take on the latest in celebrity legal drama, music, business, and industry news, and we provide legal and business commentary and analysis on hot topics in pop culture that intersect and at times collides with the law. We also invite our industry experts, our artists, and other cool people, AML people, to share their insights and experiences to benefit you. You can subscribe to our weekly podcast show. It publishes every Monday, and you can do so directly on the website at www.africamusiclaw.com or check out poddirectory.com. If you have an Android, you can find us on Stitcher Radio. For iPhone or iPad users, you can find us on iTunes. Please rate us and also leave comments on iTunes so we know how we are doing. To follow me, the host, or stay updated on the projects that I'm working on and be inspired, please visit me at www.msuduak.com or follow me on Twitter via my personal handle at Uduak. Now, I receive a lot of inquiries about legal representation. For that and to arrange a consultation for your specific legal matter, there are two ways to contact me. You can do so by directly contacting me at 916-361-6506. It's a U.S. number, so if you're calling me internationally, make sure that you apply the appropriate prefix code. The other alternative is you can email me directly, and that is Uduak, Uduak, at ebitulawgrp.com, ebitulawgrp.com. For advertising, sponsorship, or licensing inquiries, or if you'd like to give feedback about the show or appear on the show as a guest, please email me at africamusiclaw@gmail.com. This particular episode was going to be about Burna Boy from the artist standpoint, the U.S. lawsuit that's been going on. However, one of my AML listeners has asked specifically for a podcast focused on the latest issue that the story's starting to go viral, and that's the issue of Pia Mia, an American singer allegedly infringing on the copyright of Phyno's song for the song titled I'm a Fan. So what we'll do is we'll take a quick break. We'll come back and I'll talk about that issue. And then next week we'll cover the Burna Boy issue because Burna Boy and Vibesland Entertainment go back to court this week actually. So by next week, Monday, you and I will be talking about the latest in that case and also specifically for artists what to look for when you're trying to work with the promoter. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back to talk about this latest fiasco between Phyno and Pia Mia. We'll be right back. Okay, folks, we are ready to begin to take this issue that is just going everywhere viral. Just to take it on. I've been emailed, tagged all over the place, about this particular case. It's a big deal because usually you don't think of an American artist allegedly infringing on the content of an African artist. At least it's claimed, but we know that it doesn't really matter if it's good music, good fashion, good film. There's a tendency possibly to see anyone, anywhere in the world, potentially lift off another person's work. But the question is whether, as to this particular case, there is indeed copyright infringement. To get there, we've got to find out what the specific issue is. The Nigerian media, and I would completely put this at the feet of TheNet.ng. The Nigerian media, TheNet.ng specifically, because that's the story I'm seeing that's just become viral, has accused American singer Pia Mia of stealing Phyno's song titled I'm a Fan. They wrote a story. The story has now gone viral. What laws are we looking at in order to discuss this particular case? The Nigerian Copyright Act and the U.S. Copyright Act of 1976. Now, there are two versions of facts from Nigerian media houses. And there are two media houses we'll look at. The first one is the TheNet.ng that says, absolutely, unequivocally, Phyno, Pia Mia stole your song. And then we've got a different version from the Pulse.ng that says, no, that never happened. So let's start first with the TheNet.ng version. May 28, 2017, so just yesterday, the TheNet.ng published a story titled, While Nigerians slept, two American pop stars shamelessly stole Phyno's song as theirs. The article then claimed that Pia Mia stole the song I'm a Fan from Phyno, and I'll read you a very short and quick excerpt from the article. On Phyno's last album, The Playmaker, he featured Mr. Easy and DiCarlo on a song called I'm a Fan. That album came out 6 months ago. Fast forward to May 2016, I think they meant May 2017. American pop singer Pia Mia released a song with struggle R&B star Jeremy. The title, I'm a Fan. It sounded like a coincidence, so we decided to take a listen. Brothers and sisters, we never expected it. It's a glaring ripoff of Phyno's song. That's the excerpt I'm quoting. Now, since the TheNet.ng published its story, the story has gone viral with Nigerians literally just camping out in front of Pia Mia's Instagram pages and other social media pages, calling her a thief, abusing her, insulting her without more facts. We can't do that, folks. That's just wrong on all levels. We need to always know what the facts are before we want to just destroy and abuse people. Anyway, the Pulse.ng version, they come back and say, hey, wait a minute, this doesn't look right. Pia Mia did not steal the song. Here's what actually happens, or what they claim happened. They absolve Pia Mia of any wrongdoing. They say Phyno, Jeremy, and a producer called Remo were in talks about the song I'm a Fan. Producer Remo sent the song, which would be the composition and sound recording. So the composition part is the lyrics and the melody, and the sound recording, which would be the beat, to Phyno's team. Phyno's team was unable to reach an agreement on payment, copyright clearances, and so forth and so on. So negotiations reached an impasse and the deal fell through. Nevertheless, they claim Phyno decided he liked the quote-unquote idea of the sound. So he contacted a producer called Ben Jams to recreate Remo's song, added some new artists to the mix, and released the record. Remo, according to the Pulse.ng version, still had the music he created. So when Pia Mia came to him for music, he pitched the same song, the same music he had pitched to Phyno, he pitched it to her. And she recorded and released the song featuring Jeremy with Remo's consent. So there is no stealing, there is no copyright infringement. Whose version do you believe? Or whose version do I believe? I would say none of the above, until the parties step forward to clarify what exactly is going on. On the face of it, it would seem as if Pia Mia ripped off Phyno, but I don't know anything really about this to come to that kind of very hasty conclusion. And any media house or anyone that's doing that is really coming to a hasty conclusion. We don't know what happened in the back end with those people, what agreements they signed or did not sign. Whether they co-produced or collaborated, which changes the analysis on the alleged requirement of even a consent in the first place. And the list goes on and on and on. So until these parties come forward and clarify what's going on, everything is really, quote unquote, fake news, if you will. And it's just not real enough to be dragging people on the internet and abusing them and their families and all the other shenanigans that's going on.
You're listening to the AfricaMusicLaw.com show.
Nevertheless, there's a reason why we have this podcast, and there's a reason why we take on legal issues, as I said, and analyze them. Because what we can effectively say is, assuming these facts are true, what results? Assuming these facts are true, how would the law play out, whether we're looking at Nigerian Copyright Act or we're using the U.S. Copyright Act? So let's assume that the Pulse.ng's version is correct, since it has more meat and potatoes, and it's not somebody that's telling us, hey, I looked at the songs online and compared the two and whoa, somebody stole. It's saying, okay, here are the set of facts that led to this result. So let's just assume the Pulse.ng's version of reporting and facts is correct. If we make that assumption, is Pia Mia legally liable? The answer under US copyright law would be no. And also under Nigerian copyright law or Copyright Act, because based on Pulse.ng's version, Pia Mia is not a thief. She legally obtained consent from the original copyright owner of the song, which would be the producer Remo, to record and perform the song. End of story. We're done. Everybody go home. What about if we still stay on the Pulse.ng's version, and it is in fact true that Pia Mia obtained legal consent from the original copyright owner? Does that make Phyno legally liable on the Pulse.ng's version of the facts? My answer is yes. He could potentially be liable. Again, we don't know all the facts just yet, but the way they recite the facts as to Phyno's liability, he could potentially be liable for using the song of producer Remo without obtaining any kind of consent to use it and not having an excuse under the law to use his work. So here's what you should know. Under US law, because let's assume that producer Remo, if this is not resolved, would be suing in US court, which he can sue in US court. He doesn't need to go all the way to Nigeria to sue. We have certain international treaties, including the Berne Convention, that allows a US citizen, depending on how the copyrighted work of theirs is infringed in a different country, to be able to stay in the US and sue without having to go all the way to Nigeria, and vice versa as well. The key thing is, talk to your attorney. Your attorney will be able to let you know what that specific legal right is, and to be able to take it from there in terms of legal action that needs to be taken. Let's look at this case very carefully then with respect to the legal rights, talking specifically about the potential liability, if any, that would exist, assuming that Pulse.ng's version is right and their accounting of the facts are exactly what they say it is. So under US law, knowing that producer Remo doesn't have to go to Nigeria into a federal court in Nigeria to sue, but can do that conveniently in the US. Under US law, there's 6 bundles of rights that are granted whenever a song is produced. Those rights are reproduction rights, the right to reproduce, make copies of your work, distribution rights, so the right to distribute your work whether physically, digitally, or both, the right to prepare derivative works, which is at issue here. Derivative work is where you have a previously existing work and then it's either transformed or adapted into a new one, a new version, and that's what we're talking about here. You also have yet another right, the right to perform the work publicly. Those are 4 bundle of rights I've talked about now. When I say perform the work publicly, I'm talking about, for example, when a song is played on the radio or streamed online. The 5th right is the right to display the work publicly. So far so good, both on the musical works, the lyrics and melodies, so under your composition, and the sound recording, the beats, right? So the sound recording, we're talking about the beats. You have the same set of rights, 5 bundle of rights. This is where now on the 6th right, there's a little bit of a deviation. The deviation, you don't see it under the musical works, but you do see it on the sound recording part. Deviation is the very last 6th bundle of right is the right to perform the work by means of digital audio transmission. And that work is specifically the sound recording that we're talking about here, because unlike Nigeria that has more expanded rights for performers, in the US, we don't have that expanded rights for performers. So when a song is played on the radio, for example, performers don't get paid for it. Whereas in Nigeria, there's a performance rights where artists get paid when their song is played on the radio. However, in 1995, there was a law in the US that was passed that essentially now allows in the digital space for performers to get compensated when their works are performed by means or by way of digital audio transmission. So compensation when the work is performed digitally is what we're speaking of here. So now we know what those bundle of rights are. Let's focus on the key one at issue here. The focus here is that of a derivative right. That under the US Copyright Act, Phyno created a derivative work when he took the original song by Remo, added some new lyrics to the original copyrighted work to create a new work, which was I'm a Fan, featuring Mr. Easy and DiCarlo. This means unless Remo's pre-existing work that Phyno used was in the public domain, or Remo owns the new derivative work that Phyno created, Phyno must obtain copyright permission to use the song I'm a Fan. So that's if we buy the version of Pulse.ng. Now, if we buy the version of TheNet.ng, who is legally liable? So TheNet.ng is the one that says, hey, while Nigerians were sleeping, two American pop stars shamelessly steal the work of Phyno. So if the TheNet.ng's version is true, then Pia Mia is potentially liable for infringement of the song, and specifically violating that derivative right found in the musical works and the performance of the song on the Nigerian Copyright Act. The analysis would be similar to the Phyno Remo US infringement analysis, but slightly different when we're talking sound recording, because under Nigerian law, you don't have the adaptation right under the rights granted specifically for sound recordings in Nigeria. So let's close this out because it's really short and sweet until we learn more facts. We really don't know what else is going on here. The parties need to step up and let us know what's going on here if it's that important for them to put that in the public domain. Otherwise, they need to resolve the drama quietly and then show a unified voice and then step forward and say what they need to do and move on with it. And part of resolving it quietly is for their lawyers to go on the back end and help negotiate the appropriate compensation if indeed there's infringement. Otherwise, if that doesn't work, then we'll all hear about it, because then it will go to court for a lawsuit to ensue, and then we get to see what's going on. But let's close it out this way. If you're an artist listening to this, how do you determine if a work is a derivative work so that you avoid getting into legal trouble? Or even if you don't get into legal trouble, you avoid all the shenanigans that we've seen that's happening so far so good. Here's the deal. For copyright purposes, there's a simple 3-step factor you can always use to help you determine whether you need permission to use someone else's work or not. First, you need to ask yourself, am I taking someone else's expression? So has someone expressed something? Has someone created something, put it on MP3, created something, put it in writing in a book form, created something, this podcast, for example, it's an MP3. If I put it on YouTube, it's a video MP4. As someone put their expression in a tangible, concrete form and published it out there, distributed it out there, where you can see, hear, or have access to that. If the answer is yes, and you want to use that work, then you need permission to use the expressed work. In this case, did Phyno take Remo's expression fixed on an MP3? If that answer is yes, then he needs permission to have created the derivative work that he did. The second analysis or second step you should think about and try to follow if you want to avoid situations like this is to ask yourself, well, is the expression that I'm taking protected by copyright law? My podcast that you're listening to is my expression that I've put in a concrete form in an MP3 format and MP4. So my expression is protected by copyright law. So if the answer is yes, that what I'm doing right now, the content that I'm creating right now is fixed in a concrete form, MP3, MP4. If my expression that you are interested in taking is protected by copyright law, which it is, then you need my permission in order to use my work. So same concept. Is the song I'm a Fan by Remo, if in fact Remo is the one who is the original owner of the song, is it protected by copyright law? Yes, because it's been fixed in a tangible medium of expression under US law, or under Nigerian law, it's been fixed under a definite medium of expression. Simply translated in English to mean it's in concrete form. We've got an MP3. We maybe have an MP4 if we have a video up on YouTube. And somebody has come and said, hey, I want to make a version based on what you've made. And it's not a cover because you're not just replaying the exact same song. You're adding new original material to the existing material created by Remo. So you're creating a derivative work. And also, by the way, the original work is protected by copyright law. So I've said that means that you must obtain permission to use that existing original work. But remember that the new stuff you're adding also has its own copyright protection independent of the protection that the original work has. Finally, a third step to think about when you face issues like this to help you determine whether you need permission, especially where you're using a derivative work, that way you don't end up getting into trouble, is to ask yourself whether your intended use is protected under copyright law. So under copyright law, in the US, we got what's called fair use. In Nigeria, we have what's called fair dealing. And essentially it means that if you're using work that is protected under copyright law, for example, criticism, news reporting, research, scholarship, education, those kinds of activities and those kinds of uses are protected under the Copyright Act, whether you're talking about the Nigerian Copyright Act or you're talking about the US Copyright Act. So, if your intended use of the work you're taking is protected under fair use or fair dealing, if you're in Nigeria, then you can use the work and you don't need permission. However, it's always prudent to make sure that you are sure about such a use and run it by an attorney before you make your decision, because you might end up that how you're using it exceeds the scope of the exceptions to the Copyright Act. If the answer to your intended use is that your intended use is not protected under fair use or fair dealing, then guess what? You need permission. So, finally, the obvious question is, what if the TheNet.ng's story is actually untrue? What if it's fake news because it's false? There are no sources to cite authoritatively that in fact Pia Mia stole the song. It's just something that's written and it's gone viral and it's become this big issue. I'm sure it's probably going to trend before the day runs out on Twitter, etc. And people are just abusing and insulting this young woman, this young artist, without nothing more. So should or can the TheNet.ng be held liable if it turns out that their story is unverified and false and essentially fake news? The answer is yes. Potentially. If you're grossly negligent, you can potentially, even as a media outlet, be liable, especially if you're in Nigeria. It's not like you're here in the US, where we have maybe a little more protection when it comes to First Amendment rights for journalists and journalism work. But First Amendment rights does not excuse gross negligent reporting. And most importantly, for bloggers, particularly Nigerian bloggers and African bloggers in general listening to this, it's incumbent on you to understand that there's a distinction with legal reporting or legal journalism and just regular entertainment news reporting, etc. Especially when you're doing reporting that involves the law or lawsuits or copyright infringement, just put alleged
You're
in
listening
it
to
or
the
reportedly,
show.
or, don't say something emphatically as a fact when there's nothing that you have to substantiate that, because you don't know. Not only do you not know, legal issues are complex issues. And there's a reason why lawyers go to court and fight over it, because those issues are complex and it takes time to try to figure out who's in the right or wrong, or even if sometimes it seems like people are actually in the right, the results don't always come out the way you would think it should in a courtroom. So it's smart to play safe and to report accurately and to make sure that you continue to be a credible platform by not reporting authoritatively that something is in fact legally wrong, or that there is a legal violation when in fact you don't know that, and no court of law has said that that's in fact true, because then you create legal liability and not everybody will let you slide. Times have really changed. The world is smaller thanks to technology, and you don't need to be in Nigeria, neither do Nigerians have to be in the US to sue. So I like to say that's my 50 cover for all it's worth. And this particular podcast goes to the AML listener that specifically requested it. I didn't tell him I was going to shout his name on the podcast, so I'm not going to do it. Maybe next time, if he has another request, then I will for sure shout him out. All right. Thank you all for listening, AML listeners particularly. I appreciate you all. I hope this has been informative for you all and clarified some thoughts. on some of the issues surrounding this particular case that's gone viral. Until next time, I'll catch you all. Have a great one. If you are trying to reach me on issues affecting your specific legal matter, contact me via email at uduak, UDUAK, at ebitulawgrp.com. Call me at my office at 916-361-6506. That's a U.S. number. And otherwise, everything else related specifically to just African music law, hit me up at africanmusiclaw@gmail.com. Take care, have a good one, and we'll talk soon. Cheers, people.